It's totally true that all our religions today, and probably was always been the same throughout human history, they're always building on something that came before, stealing something that came before, remarketing it in a new, different way. Here's the thing, all our religions, when you look at them, on the face of it, they're all different. They're all their own universe. They've got their own language, their own theology, their own art, their own music. They all look just worlds apart. But when you take the big picture and zoom out and just look at their origin and their evolution and their development, they all look the same. The rules may change, the gods may change, but the process all looks the same. I'm known in the movement, I guess, as being a Jesus mythicist guy. And one of the side effects of that over the years is having Buddhists come up to me at conferences and say, you know, it's funny you're saying this about Jesus because we're having the same debates in our circle about whether the Buddha existed or not. Ex-Muslims would come up to me in conferences and say, you know, it's funny, we're having the exact same debate in our circles on whether Muhammad existed or not. And it turns out when you kick the tires on the biographies of all our religious founders, at least of the major world religions, the top 10 or so, they all seem to be fictitious characters, so much so that now I think it's the norm for a major world religion to start with a fictitious founder figure. You see the same patterns repeating over and over again. East, West, older religions, younger religions, they all follow the same pattern. And that includes the reaction to the people who are in the religion, the theologians, but also the historians of the religion. When you say that the subject that you've devoted your life to studying may not have existed, just the mere suggestion of that makes them go apoplectic. There's so many varieties of believing in a God, from polytheism to monotheism and everything in between. And we see, not just archaeologically, where we have like hundreds and hundreds of goddess figurines from Israel. It's the most common artifact found in certain periods. But even on the pages of our Bibles, you see they keep reworking and retconning and trying to cross off the serial numbers of the paganism that came before it, but it's all still there. And even though they try to whitewash it away, you can still find it. And that really blows my mind too, that you've got all the Canaanite traces of when Yahweh was just one more Canaanite god. And there was more than one version of Yahweh. Jonathan Adler, this archaeologist in Israel, and Russell Gmirkin, an American historian, independently of each other, they have nothing in common except they both are doing deep dives into the origins of Judaism. Russell Gmirkin is saying, yeah, not only is the Bible's version of history not true, it wasn't even written, the first 5 books of the Bible in particular, the Pentateuch, that wasn't written until the year 273 or 274 BCE. That's how well he's able to pinpoint where it came from, and in Alexandria, Egypt. Jonathan Adler, in the meantime, says archaeologically, we have no physical evidence for the practices and rituals of Judaism until the mid-3rd century BC or 2nd century BC. Completely tracks with what Gmirkin is saying. And together, you just learn the most amazing things about where, for instance, the story of Moses came from. How in the 7th century, no one seems to know about Moses, about David and Solomon's empire. We have no physical corroboration, and what little we do, famously has been said, fits in a shoebox, and none of it is a smoking gun that's like, oh yeah, that's incontrovertible. When it comes to Islam, what surprises me the most about the origins of Islam is that the closer we look, we find so much what's called hadith, stories about Muhammad. But the closer you go to ground zero when Muhammad was meant to have actually lived, less and less and less and less and less. For the first 50, 60 years, there is no Muhammad, in essence. The physical evidence we have for a guy named Muhammad may not be talking about a guy named Muhammad, it may be talking about a guy whose title was Muhammad, and that guy is certainly not our Muhammad. Again, the same kind of patterns you see in Buddhism, in Judaism, in Christianity, you name it. Even religions that I didn't expect to follow the pattern, like most famously Sikhism. Sikhism is only about 500 years old, And I really went into this project saying, well, I want to check all the big heavy hitters, but I'm sure these guys aren't going to fit the pattern. They so do. They so do. Volume 1 is the evolution of God and the gods of monotheism. The first part talks about all of the evolutionary stages that human history's religions have all gone through, regardless of what religion you're talking about. Part 2 is called the gods of monotheism, and I didn't mean to write a whole separate half of the book just on that, but that section just kept getting bigger and bigger, and because we think, oh, first you have animism, and everybody thinks everything is a god, and then you have a pantheon, it gets whittled down, and then you get the one true God, trademark. And it's so much messier than that. We have all these different ways of believing. None of it was obvious or inevitable. We could have had any number of other gods that could have been the one true God. Volume 2 is on Judaism and Christianity. Volume 3 is on Islam and the Eastern religions. And they all basically get into where these came from, who was their founder figure, who wrote their scriptures, and how we know these things. And just, it's not the final word. These are the opening arguments of my case, not the closing arguments. And I'm just the messenger on this, showing what we've been finding out collectively through scholarship in the last few years. It just blows my mind. I'm so jazzed about it.